So like Mexican dominoes. We were playing
Yo.
our one and only.
Our one and only fight.
That lasted hours.
But you know what? To our defense, it only lasted one night.
Yes. Yes. I don't think it was all. I don't think the game was ever finished. But
no. Yeah. And I think we scarred him forever. All right, we are recording. I'm really happy to do this with you because I think this conversation is like so necessary and important, and the reflection piece is so necessary and important. And so, yeah, I love that we're doing this, and I think it is super important to tell people how we met and how we started this friendship, how we ended up in this room today. So what was it, 2013? We both were living in DC?
That sounds right, yeah.
Yeah, and your roommate was a Peace Corps Mali volunteer? Okay, so the way I tell this story, and jump in at any time. Right. And it's one of my favorite stories to tell. And you are one of my favorite people on earth. I tell people all the time, we basically family at this point. We cousins, you know? We cousins.
You only collard greens outside of the family that my dad eats.
Yes.
And I remember he shaded you so bad that year. My mom had to vouch and be like, nah, I have these.
He was like, I don't trust it. I don't trust. And look, I can't blame a Black Southern man for not trusting a young whippersnapper's greens. You know what I mean? Like, on paper, that makes sense. So I appreciate that he was open to it. And now he like, yeah, them the greens.
Is
them
the greens. Because my mom doesn't cook greens. We'll do cabbage. I mean,
she did reach out to me one year and was like, maybe I'll try it. Like, you know, what did you do? Yeah. But I don't know if she committed or not, you know?
I don't think she committed. No shade to my mom, but like
no shade at all. We love moms. We love Mama Bell. And shout out to my mom for teaching me how to cook some halfway decent greens. Right, these are life skills.
Not 100%. Like so good.
So the way I tell our meet cute story, if you will, our friendship meet cute, we were at a house party it was mostly Return Peace Corps Mali volunteers. Yeah. Oh. And then your roommate, Carmen, was also Peace Corps Mali. She was a stage before me. She invited you. We was all having a good time. We was in Adams Morgan. This was before Lyft and Ubers like took off big.
Yep,
so we was heavy. Yep, we was heavy on the public transport, right? Yeah. And because of the neighborhood we were in and the neighborhood you and I lived in, which is actually, we lived in the same neighborhood, but it's placed in a way that there's only one bus that cut across, basically. And so we was all having a good time, but it was starting to get late. And we was, you know, we had missed the bus and then we missed another bus because we was having such a good time. And, you know, it's like herding cats to get people out. It was a bunch of us that lived in that neighborhood. And so finally, you know, we started to finally move out to the street, but we still having conversations and we still talking and, you know, still lingering in a lot of ways. And at some point I looked at my app that was telling me when the buses was coming, and the last bus was like approaching. And I was like, I know no other way in a city to get home. You know what I mean? I just moved here. Like, the funds are not funding as to where I'm like going to take a taxi. If the taxis are around, who knows?
Even on that street, like, we wouldn't have gotten a taxi because it was a side street of a side street. And then I remember that in DC, pre-Lyft and Uber, the taxis were really, it was almost like a West Africa taxi where they kind of did certain routes. So I think we wouldn't have even found it.
We would have been walking home, and I was not about that life. So I just know at some point I was like, okay, bye y'all. Waved and started running, right? I like take off at full speed because I'm not even joking when it's like one of them things where the app is like 0 minutes away. Like, it was approaching, right? So I take off running. I'm yelling at the bus driver, like, wait. And I get on the bus and I'm like, whoo. 2 seconds later, Ebben come behind me, hops in the seat next to me. And it's like, why was we running? And we've been friends, literally attached at the hip ever since. Ever
Well,
since.
on my side, I just remember that I did go to this party. Like you said, my roommate was Peace Corps Molly, so I didn't know any of you all yet. Y'all definitely become like one of my closest group of friends to this day. Even though I didn't serve with y'all, I was in the country next to you in Burkina. And almost like Niger when you think about it, because I was so far to the east.
On the border.
In Togo and Benin, I could bike to Togo and Benin if I wanted to.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I was like right there. Benin was further. Togo was like there. But yeah, I just remember meeting you. Somehow we established I lived in the same neighborhood. And I made the memory of like, I'm not even sure. I don't remember how I got there. Obviously, I just followed Carmen. But we established that we were in the same neighborhood. And I think Carmen would have had to left already.
Yeah, she did leave early.
Yeah. And so you and I established I lived in the same neighborhood. And I'm like having a good time with like Paula and them. And I just see you dart. Like I didn't hear your goodbyes. I just saw you dart. And for me, I remember running down those stairs because they're like those metal stairs. We were on the upper level of the townhouse, and it was enough that I was like, "Don't fall, don't fall, don't fall." And I remember sprinting uphill to Admo to that stop. And yeah, when I sat down, I was like, "Okay, well, you're like to catch the bus." I was like, "Oh."
You're like, "Cool, yeah, cool."
Yeah, but I just knew like she knows how to get home. I don't. Like, so she just ran after.
You saw running and you ran, and I appreciate that. And we on the same page. We've been on the same page.
Because much like you, I just moved to DC. Like I didn't know it was pre-Uber, pre-Lyft. And the part you don't know, the other reason I was so sensitive, like I got to go now because she went, is one of my first trips in DC. I was having dinner with a mentor in College Park or something. Literally, I missed the train, the metro back into the city by one train. And I don't believe in running for public transport. I'll tell that to everybody. But that memory had scarred me, and I was like, nope, like I'm not paying for a taxi. I'm not finding a taxi. Like she knows how to get home. I'm gonna follow her.
I feel especially special in your life if you don't run for public transport. You was like, I'm running this time. I know she running. I'm running.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it was.
Okay, so just for the sake of anybody listening or watching, we should probably introduce ourselves fully. So tell me, well, and I'll start. Basically, like your name, full name, well, as much as you want to reveal, where you live, and kind of what you're up to now, and then we'll talk about Peace Corps and our service as well. So I'll start just as an example. I'm Veronique. You can call me V. I currently live in Aurora, Colorado, but I am a Chicago girly through and through, born and raised. And I'm a social entrepreneur. I run a business called Ampersand Workspace, kind of boutique agency where I am the people development specialist. And my whole thing is to help people advance their skills, leadership skills, facilitation skills, and help organizations advance their workplace cultures to a place where we are utilizing our human talent and developing our human talent, even as technology gets more and more advanced. So that's where I'm at and kind of what I live and what I do in this moment. And then we can talk about Peace Corps in a little bit, but tell everybody about you.
All right. Well, my name is Ebben Wiley Bell. I'm currently in Tampa. I'm a project manager for a nonprofit downtown in Tampa. I run our DASH program. It's like a on-demand microtransit system because I made my way into tech mobility, like mobility tech. Ironically, like as Lyft and Uber were becoming a thing. So kind of funny. Like if I had my current career now, I don't think we'd be friends.
Right?
Yeah. I'm a Texas native. What we moved around a lot. Went to University of Florida, which is how I ended up into Peace Corps.
Yeah, and same actually for me. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. No, you go.
I'm from Burkina Faso. So I can't do it backwards, but if this is Africa, Burkina Faso is like right there, and
in that little corner,
right there.
Yeah, I don't know if I can like put a little picture in here or something, but we'll try to attach it because I do think it's important for people to see the continent laid out and then exactly where we were in West Africa. So you were in Burkina.
My Peace Corps service when I graduated. I bought wedding invites. In the RSVP card, I printed little maps of West Africa and was like, I'll be here.
Oh, that's really cute. I used to always tell people, so I served in Mali in West Africa. And I used to always tell people, and they're like, well, where's Mali? And I'm like, are you familiar with Timbuktu? Right? Even the name Timbuktu. They'd be like, yeah. I'm like, Mali, Timbuktu's in Mali. That's where I'm going. It's way north. And it's a huge country, but it's in Mali. So that was always my frame of reference is Timbuktu. And yeah.
What's crazy is also people don't realize how big the continent is. Because as a Texan, like obviously we believe everything is smaller because everything's bigger in Texas. So if someone throws out a state size, I'm like, like that's nothing. Because Burkina Faso is like the size of Colorado. So since you're in Colorado, you know, to me, I'm a Texas. Yeah. Well, it's not Texas, so it doesn't matter. But then I know that when we were flying from Paris to Ouagadougou, the capital of Burkina, we were just over the Sahara for the longest. It was one of those like you wake up, okay, we're over the Mediterranean, fall asleep, we're over the Sahara, fall asleep, wake up again, we're still over the Sahara. Or Sahara, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but then you learn that the desert itself is like the size of the continental United States. So the fact that the continental United States in the desert and go from Miami to Seattle or from like San Diego to Maine and just be in desert that whole time blows my mind. And it sucks because you're in the same time zone. So you're just flying straight south from Paris to Wagga. You're not even getting any time. Like at least like flying from, New York to Paris, you have the time change.
Get a little time.
You're just in the same time zone going down the whole time.
Honestly, I'm super impressed that like when you were going into country that you had the wherewithal to be tracking where you were. Like I think I was 6 sitting in between aisles, like, Lord, just let me make it. Just let me make it. So even that is like
my
impressive.
First time leaving the US.
Me too, actually. It was my first time leaving the US. Yeah. My travels started after Peace Corps. Like literally, I been to a couple of places. I went to school in Iowa. I've been to Michigan here or there, like Indiana borders, Illinois, but like outside of that, I really was not on my travel game until, significantly after Peace Corps. But yeah, that was my first time leaving the country. And what a time. We decided to leave the country and just go full in.
Oh, yeah. I think it was the perfect time.
No, it is. And honestly, trial by fire, right? And we can talk later about skills, but like, if you can literally lead your own country for the first time and kind of dive into a West Africa Peace Corps experience specifically, right? You can do a lot more things in life, You can make it. You can make it. Okay, so tell me about your service.
So I went in as what was called a Girls Education Empowerment Volunteer.
Oh, cute.
GEE. And I learned a lot of, like, I didn't know what development was. I learned about Peace Corps because I sat in on someone's class at Florida. I think it was called like Plants, Plagues, and People. No, it was some 100 class. But the way that they took attendance was literally based on like if someone was in your seat, that was a sign like that you chose the first day, you got credit for attendance. So a friend at one of the jobs I was working was like, yo, like I need you to go sit in my class for me, or I need someone to sit in my seat. I can't go to class. You get free fruit at the end. Because I guess like exotic fruits and stuff. So I was like, cool, I'm not doing anything that period. Like I'm already on that side of campus. I'll do it. And that was the day the Peace Corps recruiter was talking to everybody.
Wow.
So that's
how serendipitous.
I always say my life is like Slumdog Millionaire and Forrest Gump, like a little bit of both. A little bit of Lexus. Like I'm like those three with a touch of Forrest Gump.
A little bit of Lexus.
You know my life. Just random ass like stories. That's like, how did you end up in this situation? I don't know. But I'm here. And so it was just a serendipitous moment of like the Peace Corps recruiter in my class. And then I eventually graduated with sociology. But for my sociology capstone, the same recruiter came back. And so I was like, okay, like I'm hearing about this again. And we had a really cool, a really active Peace Corps like community. At the time when I went, Florida was #1 for undergraduate Peace Corps recruits. Shout out to Amy. Wow. Yeah. Every Friday we had like a tea time at one of the local bars and return volunteers. If you came through Gainesville, you like talked about your experience. And We had that PAP line. I remember the Peace Corps wiki, where you're like, where am I going based on my invitation? And this is like, again, it's a little after Facebook where you have to conjugate with so-and-so is, and always put it in that form. But yeah, it was just serendipitous. So I went in with girls education empowerment because of my French. On my transcript, I had a lot of French. And I had also studied Arabic and really wanted like an Arabic speaking country. So I was like slow on my paperwork because I was like, if I get it turned in at this time, I can get this one. But because I have more credits in French than Arabic, they're like, no, like you're gonna go here. Because we didn't get to choose at that time.
Right.
So, like Burkina, I want to say was the second poorest country, if not the poorest country of the countries that we recognized at the time. We, the United States. I have no idea what development was because Peace Corps wasn't. They don't talk about it in terms of like development.
Yeah,
at least I've heard in it. So. Same. Yeah, I get there. You think you know everything because we're American.
And young. And like young and dumb, right?
Young, dumb, and free. Because God watches out for the babes and the fools, and sometimes you're
Period.
And babes in terms of life. And yeah, like I just remember talking with one of the kids, and they all taught us how to talk about Peace Corps and everything. So you're like, oh, we're here for like to help you with development, and we're going to help make sure that everyone gets educated and everyone has access to clean water and everyone has access to healthcare and all this stuff. And the little kid, and I'm saying this in my broken French because this is like during our etude, and the little kid was like, oh, that's great, Monsieur. Do you have that in America? And I was like, no.
But I'm going to give it to you.
Yeah. And I remember very much in that moment, I was like, you know what? Screw what I'm supposed to do. I'm going to do whatever my village tells me to do. Whatever they tell me to do, figure this out. Because who am I to tell you how to develop when I part of my ignorance, but I still don't believe Flint has good water now. And we're how many years out from Peace Corps? Like we established more than 10 years. And that'd been going on for a while. So yeah, I was like, you know what? I don't know about development. Even if I did, I don't. So I'm gonna do whatever you want. So I did really cool pump restoration projects where we brought food into like the local markets, and then food into the canteen. And our PTAs are, I forget what you call them in French now. The APE, the Association de Parents and Élèves, or something like that. Yeah, I just remember APE. They were able to get proceeds from that. I did really fun tailoring projects. We produced a fashion show.
Oh, not a fashion show?
Yeah, because the only reason I joined Peace Corps because I wanted to work for Louis Vuitton because I needed to make sure my French was fluent because you needed French fluency to work for to have an internship at Louis Vuitton. So I was like, start working on this fashion thing now and make sure that I know what's going on. And it was a really cool way of sharing and preserving culture because when you go to the market, everyone's doing the same thing. So I worked with the Women's Association, and I talked to all the tailors in the market and used their scraps to make patchwork. So that taught the women how to sew straight, and then pattern making in terms of cutting all the pieces for the bags. Zipper installation, buttonholes and button installation. So you learned all the pieces of the garment through putting together these bags. And then when you look at the perceived value of a fashion accessory, that's very much the same in West Africa as it is in the United States. We look at those currency and how people spend their money. They'll spend money for a produced bag and stuff like that, kind of like how we'll spend money for bags. And so you're able to turn that trash into like a treasure and like teach them how to sew because it was a 3-year stage, a 3-year training where they literally just observed for the first year and didn't even touch anything.
Wow. So this was intensive.
Yeah. So this was a way of them like getting up to speed with sewing and all of that so they could make garments faster and make money for both them and their tailor that they were working under.
Yeah.
So it was a really
fun.
That
is really cool.
Yeah.
That is really cool. And such a unique kind of contribution as a Peace Corps volunteer, right? Like going in wanting to work for Louis Vuitton, it's like I immediately was like, I can only imagine, and maybe no shade to Louis Vuitton, sorry for Louis Vuitton, but I can only imagine that they would look at your West African French, right, or your West African accent and be like, no, it's not quite what we want.
Right.
After all of that work, right, and all of that expertise and effort, so that's so interesting to me, but really cool experience that you had. And I never realized your official title, which is a really cool title too. My title was not as glamorous. I was an education volunteer. Just that's what it was. But we didn't teach. So a lot of countries, education volunteers would teach, and we didn't teach. We kind of supported kind of educational structures. And the thing that was most interesting about being an education volunteer in Mali at that time is that Mali had a longstanding Peace Corps program, but education had gotten phased out and then they phased it back in. And so we, as volunteers, like we had a new APCD. What does APCD stand for?
Associate Peace Corps Director, but then in French.
No, I think it was in English, APCD.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So there you go. Associate Peace Corps Director. Yeah. So they were like the head of the different sections for us. And our education one, when our group came in, because we were the first kind of new education group, and they had just hired him, like maybe like a couple months before we came in the country. And like, they didn't really give him anything. They didn't give him like full training. It was really trial by fire for him too. And they also didn't give him materials to train us. So he really was just like, and again, it wasn't like he came into an established program. So they were just like, you'll be great. And he was great, actually. But it was such a big learning curve for that group. And then I ended up becoming a trainer the next year, which was nice. But we supported USA projects that were close to us. We supported PTAs. We supported informal and formal schools. So there are a bunch of communities that would, put together a school at somebody's house or in the middle of a field somewhere or a clearing and have kids be taught that way. And it's like, okay, well, how can we better support these community schools? How can we better support the formal schools to make sure they got, benches for kids to sit and that sort of thing. And similar to you, I really believed that the idea about going into Peace Corps literally was to soak up what it is that they actually wanted and needed, and not to go into somebody else's house and tell them what to do and tell them how they should live their lives. Like, I definitely would take some kind of offense with somebody, especially some whippersnapper, right? Like some young person coming in and telling me what to do. And specifically then, I looked so young. And so most people didn't even believe that I was a Peace Corps volunteer. They're like, you're here to be a student? Like, are you here to find a husband? Like, what's happening, child? And I had to be like, I'm official. I'm official for real.
And that goes to part of the conversation we'll have later. I think part of the issue is also like, not only were we young, but that we were Black, because I feel like there were times where I would have to go to white volunteer and be like, bruh, like, I just need you to say this, because they're not listening.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, because I do feel like even though like there was times where I was still like Nasara or Tubabu, so white, which means for them foreigner visitor,
right?
But that's a whole different thing, because having been called white my whole life growing up, it's like that was a lot of stuff to unpack, and then and it like comes back and it's like, damn, like, no,
I can't escape it.
I'm like you. And like, no, you're light skinned. I'm like, no, I'm not. Like,
really?
Yeah. And then I remember getting some photos developed and getting photos back. And I was like, oh, I see what they mean now. Like, I am lighter compared to them. Yeah. And it was just really confusing. But there were still times where, like, even though I'm not them, I'm not American, or like I'm not official enough to like have the say. So not only am I young, I'm also not like
what they expect.
Yeah. And so I'd have to sometimes like hit a friend up and be like, yo, I need you to like help me be like the financier or something. I just need to worry, on this project, because they're not listening to me, because I don't look part.
That is so interesting, because I feel like I would be on public transport and people would greet me and then be like, where you from? And they knew that I wasn't Malian, but they were convinced that I was African.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like, give them the whole spiel, like, okay, yeah, I'm here with the Peace Corps and I'm American or whatever. And they're like, okay, well, where your people from? And I'm like, actually, from Chicago, I can trace back to the South, some place called Mississippi. And they like, no, but like when we say where you from, like here, where are you from here in Africa? And I was like, yeah, so it's this thing called slavery that happened in the US. And then they literally on purpose, and I'm literally having these conversations in Barbara, right? Where I'm telling them, yo, they literally on purpose erased our history. I really don't know. And they like, that seems like a you problem. Call your mom and ask her. And I'm like, my mom doesn't know because structurally they took that away from us. Like we don't, Mississippi is as far as I can trace. And they're like, okay, well, call your grandpa then. Like they just were like, you need to connect to your roots, like stop running from it. And I'm like, I promise it's not a run thing, So they knew I wasn't Malian, but they were convinced that I was African in some way, shape, or form, and that I needed to like come to terms with that. So it is so interesting to see the variation of differences. And I also was super far away from any other volunteers. Like my first year, my closest volunteer was 2 hours, maybe 3 hours away. And so I didn't have like another person to turn to of any color to say, I mean, I have my work partners, right? And that's a whole nother thing. And like developing a good relationship with your work partners, them having enough connection in the community to like really, show you what's up and move you along, or awareness more than anything about cultural things. But I didn't have anybody else to turn to. And so I literally did spend that first year like getting in with the community so that, people at least knew my face or knew some little thing about me, and understanding how the community worked and what it is that they did need. So that way I could like be of better service in that regard. But even still, like I would be riding my bike and they'd be like, oh yeah, so you go to school here? You came from America to go to school here? And I'm like, no, I'm working with the school. I'm helping the school. And they're like, but are you? You're too young.
It's so funny because for me, like I wouldn't be American. They're like, no, you're from here. You're a Fulani. You're a Poulard. Like your nose,
because you're lighter.
And you're lighter. So they're like, but your dad has to be something because you're like strong, like you're solid.
They're like, we're trying to figure you out.
Then, much like to you, when they were saying the thing about like, but where are you from? That's like I was so and still to this day I'm somewhat envious about how like the West African culture, and I feel like it's every type of Black except us, like Black Americans trace their lineage by the ethnicity of their people. So like it was always so poetic because they would say, well, my mom is this, like my mom is Gramaian, my father is this, and then my mom's father was this. Kind of like in Arabic, the names go like literally my mom's father's brother. Like so there's no question as to what side you're talking about, but they can specifically go back generations of like what their ancestry was. And then much like you, I'm like, we're from Texas. Like my mom's people are from Arkansas eventually, and somewhere we go back to I think the Carolinas or Georgia. And they're like, no, to you, but where are you from?
But no, like get it together.
Yeah, I would shut down the conversation sometimes and be like, look, at the end of the day, your people put my people on the boats.
Oh,
so you're
don't be catching strays.
And I mean, they would laugh and stuff. I'm like, essentially, that's kind of what it was. Like, we're all from here. We're from here somewhere, but somewhere one of your people put one of my people or enough of my people on the boat. So like, that's how I ended up over there.
When I was in Peace Corps too, it was a beautiful thing because Obama was in office, right? And there was so much Black American pride around Obama, but there was a ton of West African pride around Obama as well.
Because he's also African. His dad.
Exactly. And so they claimed him. They love to celebrate him as well. And I end up having this. Did y'all have the Panya with Obama's face on it, or any of the Panya? There were a couple. There were a couple. But yeah, I still have. I can pull out the Panya that I have because I preserved it. I'm like, this is history right here. This got to stay. I got to keep this. And it was like the brown tone one with his face on there. And I used it for a while. And after a while, I was like, we got to stop using this. I think it's weird to have Obama's face on my body like this. So I stopped using it, but then I was able to preserve it and keep it, because that's history right there. But I think that it would be interesting, because even going abroad, regardless of where you are going abroad, and our reputation as Americans then, and serving in the Peace Corps then under Obama, versus, maybe the reputation that the U.S. has now, and the ways in which we're thought of abroad now. Did you have any distinct experiences around like being Black, but also like under the era of Barack Obama's America, if you will,
That's interesting. I think because for me, I look at what's kind of even prompted. I think we forgot to say what kind of got it to where we like, we should have a call and talk about this. Is you made a really cool post about Blackness, and when you first realized you were Black, or like understood Blackness, and you were saying that for you, you grew up just surrounded by Black people. For me, I didn't. The only Black people I really knew were like my family members. And we have a huge family, and we come from like a medium-sized town. I think when I was growing up, it was like 250,000 people.
Oh, wow.
I actually met someone the other day at the restaurant, because I work at a restaurant part-time, from my hometown, Corpus. And when I was telling my coworker, like, oh yeah, it's like 250,000 people, he's like 350,000. So I was like, oh, I see y'all coming along.
Y'all got some growth.
Yeah, like, it took 30 years. But to my point, the town was small enough that I was like, they were of a certain age where I was like, you probably know like my people. And it was a white dude. He's like, oh, who's your family? And I said, Bell. He's like, Bell. I knew a Jack Bell. I'm like, that's my grandpa.
Oh shoot.
So even if it is 350,000 people, it's still small enough that like my family is small enough, and we're like the only Black Bells that actually and stuff. And so at Florida, I actually studied African American studies. Like that was where I was like, you know what, like I need to get more in touch with my roots before there was a show, and like see what's up. And that's what really started to open my eyes to it. And when I learned about diaspora, because I'd never even heard about like the African American diaspora, what that even meant, and I never really gotten into that, and understanding that we are Black Americans and Caribbean American and African American, studying that lineage and how we came to be what we are, all because our ancestors put us on the boats. Like you like start to learn so much more. And so in the Peace Corps setting, I feel like it's very interesting that with Barack Obama, it goes back to that they can trace him to Africa easier than we can. And they understood, oh, his father's Kenyan, and they didn't really talk about his mom. But it, like, I think that for them, it like registered more than for us. Because for me, I also always had site mates. My first site, I had a site mate that was down the street from me, and then another that was about a 13K bike ride from us, like a 40-minute bike ride from us, but would always come to our market because we had the bigger market. And then when I lived in Waiguya, I had a site mate down the street from me, and he was the computer teacher at the high school. So everybody knew him because that was like a really prestigious position to have a computer lab in West Africa, and he was the one who was running. And then even like during season and stuff, and they always saw us together because his house was closer to my house to town, and so I would go out and do my stuff, and especially during hot season, I didn't want to bike all the way to my house, so I would just go to his house for like the repose, and I would always just nap there. Had like an indoor shower and stuff. So he was kind of like the big brother of our area, where everyone just went to his house because he had such a great setup. And like the drop ceilings that had like the layer between it, so his house stayed cooler. He had like a functionaire house. So I just did that. But going back to the original question, it was just it was still interesting for me because I was always surrounded by like white volunteers, and except for Al, and she had amazing local language, and she really fit in with her community. But I think that because they could trace Barack Obama to Africa, like I was obviously like, man, there's no Ponye of me. Like I wasn't on that level. So I think that
not yet, you young.
Exactly. yeah. So yeah, I think that that's where it kind of differentiated. But there was still a love for America overall. Taking race out of it. Like I remember it was the little petites that, you know, told me about Bin Laden because they were like celebrating hardcore that day and they're like, Obama.
Oh,
Obama. Wow. So there's very much a love for us in that sense.
Yeah. No, you know, I've traveled a lot since Peace Corps, right? And like, you know, I was abroad when Trump got elected the first time. And so for me, I can see the stark contrast to, again, traveling for the first time, right, abroad and being in West Africa and that being a moment of such pride, right? He wasn't even from West Africa, right? His dad is not from West Africa. I mean, like, we claimed him anyway. We would be on the road. We would see Obama barbershops. We had the panniers of fabric with Obama's face on it. And if I said, I was exactly, or all shades, that's a conversation for another time. Is Obama light skinned? Anyway.
I've seen dark skinned Obama too. Like,
exactly.
At the barbershop.
So it was such a point of pride. And so for me to be able to, like you said, to say I'm American, and they didn't immediately register that was the case because, you know, I was also Black, right? And so when they were like, oh, you're American, oh, like Obama. So at least there was that tie of like, and in some ways it complicated my story because they're like, well, Obama know where his people are from. Why don't you know where your people are from? And I'm like, okay, but it's a little more complicated than that. And so it gave me a point of reference, right? When like the sea of folks that are coming from the Peace Corps or that are associated with Peace Corps, both at home and abroad, are usually considered white. And the idea of Americans is usually considered white. And so for me to pop up, they like, we're a little thrown off, but also Obama. Okay, cool. So it was definitely a helpful point of reference. And like you said, a friendly point of reference in a lot of ways. As opposed to like when I was in London, when Trump got elected and they were like, oh, you American. Are you okay? How do you feel about all this? What is going on over there? I'm like, look, your guess is as good as that, bro. Like, I also am shocked. Okay, like, so it's such a stark contrast, right? And the fact that like, yeah, I always knew I was Black, right? And I grew up in Black Chicago, but then I went to college in the middle of Iowa at Grinnell, right? And that was very much so a majority white institution, right? And then I stayed in Iowa for a year and a half before Peace Corps. And then that's where I returned to after Peace Corps too. So I went from, you know, being in an all Black environment to all white environments. The Peace Corps, which was technically an all Black environment, but complicated. And then back to this all white environment and the ways in which there was almost like a racial shock happening. Like we talk about culture shock when you come back from the Peace Corps and you're readjusting to your own culture and, you know, getting back into the groove of things. I also had that kind of culture shock, a racial culture shock in regard to like being in these environments and what those environments put on me or expected from me as a Black person moving through them. So the president thing, like I asked because it was Obama specifically, but it is always interesting to me that like how we're moving through spaces and then what people put on us as Black folks, depending on what space we're in, you know?
I think it's also interesting because one of my site mates, I remember he was like Irish, like of Irish descent. Mm-hmm. And his family immigrated to the US like in the early 1900s, 19-teens. But I remember that we were having a conversation one time with the gendarme, like over coffee or something. Like I don't know what gendarme becomes in English.
Police, the po-po.
Yeah, the sheriffs or something, like in terms of like levels, like the county sheriff or whatever.
Law enforcement.
There we go. And so I just remember being like, well, my great grandfather was born in 1907 in Texas or 1908, somewhere like that. And we can kind of trace a little bit back to like the people before that. So I was like, on a technical level, my family's more American than his family, like because we've been here longer. But to your point, and I had explained, you know, they erased our history, and it's not something that we actually study or that we're even able to study because of like just the laws in the United States and how everything was. Because another thing people don't realize, and we joke about it, like I said the whole boat comment, but people like to say the thing about slavery where like the Africans had slavery, so we weren't doing anything different, but it was a different system of slavery.
Hondo. Yeah, let's talk about that real quick. It's the worthwhile side quest, I think, because it's a joke that is rooted in truth, of course. That like, your folks put us on the boats, but what people don't understand in trying to like not address enslavement in the U.S. and not address the true elements of enslavement in the U.S. Like even now, we still have current day this conflation between enslavement and immigration. They are not the same. They are not the same. Enslaved people were not immigrants. They had no choice in the matter. They did not choose to leave their homes. But more than anything, this idea of like, I've had those conversations in the past with a variety of folks and a variety of colors about the idea of, well, the Africans should take responsibility for American enslavement, because especially West Africans, because they put us on boats. And if you look at historically and then even current day to the ways in which servants are treated and how they're part of the family, to enslavement that we saw in the U.S., chattel slavery that we saw in the U.S., and then more so in the islands around, like it was even worse in the islands around, the idea was not the same. And it like the names were the same, but like the manifestation of what that looked like was not the same. And one of the things that I learned when I was in visiting what I call the Black Smithsonian, but the Smithsonian Museum, National African American Cultural and History. It's like NAACH.
That's the
Black Smithsonian.
Yeah, I just call it.
So exactly. So when I went to see the Black Smithsonian, when you're at the bottom, when they're talking about, and it feels like a ship, and they're giving you all these facts. When they started bringing over the first rounds of what they then, the folks that they then enslaved, those Africans on average were literally living 7 years on average. So a lot of them died a lot sooner, and some of them were able to hold on a little longer, but they were working people so hard to the bone and killing them that their lifespan shortened to an average of 7 years. This is not the same slavery that we're talking about here.
Oh no, you can go. You can sure.
No. Please, keep going. No, please.
Well, no, I was saying that was a thing too, and like that's when it really clicked for me, because I'm not sure how it was in Mali, but in Burkina, in our little country that's the size of the state of Colorado, we had about 73 ethnicities, I believe, is like what was done at the time, and we had a majority, or is it majority? I think they had a majority, not even plurality. Like they had more than 51%. I want to say was the Mosi people. But there's a hierarchy of ethnicities because of wars and everything. And so there are people who joke like, oh, like he's my slave. Like we want a slave. And it took me a while to understand that. And they say it jokingly and lovingly in their culture because of like that history. I was like, we don't joke like that in America. Like you would never say that, especially to a Black person. Like you can't say that.
Yeah.
And they're like, I don't understand. And and it wasn't because of my French, but it was just a matter of like, it's culturally different. And even though I had learned that like in African American studies classes, because I think I'm only like a class and paper away from a minor. But in all that time studying it, it never really clicked that like, and even in the museum, like in the Black Museum, the Blacksonian, like it doesn't click that like culturally, like it's just very different, because they didn't know they were selling people into that, and especially the American system. Like in the Caribbean, they worked people to death. In South America, they just no need to keep them alive. And even like I know that they were saying they found bones of Black Americans or slaves under Old Wall Street, where like the muscle had ripped off the muscle, like the muscle had ripped off the bone,
detached from the bone. Yep.
Because they were worked so hard. So in the Caribbean and Latin America, it was cheaper to just replace them. I think that's what's so cruel about American slavery. And I very much said cruel, not cool, but so cruel about American slavery that when the slave trade was banned, they said, okay, hold my bag. We're just going to work them to an inch within their life and breed them. and make it generational and inherited, because that's also something that's not the same in West Africa. At least I understand. And as they told me, just because your parents were a slave doesn't make you a slave. Doesn't mean your life's going to be easier, that you're going to be able to ascend, but you're not born into slavery like your parents. And ours, they made it hereditary. They split their families apart. And like, that's not how they did it in West Africa. So even though I say like, it's partly in that West African joking sense, like, yes, I'm a little bit serious. I'm not mad at it, because like I very much love my American life, and whatever problems there are, America's still home and always will be. Well, maybe not always, but you know, it's still like where I was born, and like what my
your heart
says in that heart. And you do get homesick when you're abroad. But I really truly believe down in my core that those ancestors that did put our ancestors on the boat didn't know what they were doing. Because in their experience, that's not what it was.
100%. 100%. And even if they had heard stories, or, you know, somehow or another it was recounted, I don't think an understanding of what this looked like and what it would become, right, was at their forefront when this was happening. And B, we're talking about a small percentage of people. This isn't like a whole country being like, yeah, let's give up this group of people to be enslaved, right? We're talking about, you know, certain people who were in power and who said, yeah, money over human lives. And that's what they were on, because their understanding was different, and maybe their values, right? But to try to place blame on somebody else for what was literally perpetuated here in the US, I'm like, it can't go beyond a joke, because that's just not rooted in authenticity, right? It's not rooted in facts. It's not rooted in history. It's not rooted in authenticity. And I do think when you mention like the kind of joke about like, oh yeah, that's my slave, and like it literally is a joke. In Mali, we had joking cousins. And so yes, you know, you had different people from different ethnic groups that might have had conflict with each other over the time, and those morphed into joking cousins. And so immediately somebody asked you your last name, I was a Cisse, and they would be like, oh, well, you eat beans. And literally the joke is implied that you eat beans and you fart. Like, this is light. This is love. You know what I mean? Like, this is us greeting each other, trying to build a rapport. That's what Malians were on, you know, where they created this thing where it really was a joke, and it really was, let's create rapport, let's acknowledge, but move past it, right? And we haven't gotten to the point of acknowledging in the US. Like, we still trying to maneuver around. We don't want to take accountability. We don't want to literally be uncomfortable by anything, no less history. And we want to remove ourselves from it. So we can't get to the point of like, okay, we can acknowledge it and joke and move past it, because we still fighting for the rights. We still fighting to disrupt oppressive systems. You know, like we still live in the effects and the systems that have been put in place to literally keep us down and marginalized, right? So seeing the ways in which, like, there's a common practice in Mali that if there was conflict in the village, that it didn't have to be the chief of the village, it didn't have to be somebody of power, but somebody who you respected and knew could do it, but you were bringing a moderator to come in and have that conversation. So it could be a domestic dispute between a man and a wife, or multiple wives. It could be, you know, a dispute between a dispute between farmers that were, you know, sharing land and whatever, right? Whoever it was. But the concept was, we're going to bring somebody in here, a third party who is serving as neutral, who can be neutral, and who can help us have these conversations. Those are cultural practices that are literally put in place to help us live together better. And we just don't have those same sort of cultural practices. Like, it's not that we don't have them. They're not as prevalent. They're not as widely spread. And we're not teaching them actively, I don't think.
Well, it's interesting. For us, we had the third party system as well. In our system in Burkina, you didn't come together and have it moderated, but you did tell the third party. So like, it was me, you, and I had an issue with you. I know you're close to like Delisa or Mayor. I could do it. Hey, Delisa, Mayor, this is what V did. Da 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 da. Why I'm mad. They would go to you and be like, hey V, like, this is what Ebben said, and like, not in a messy way, surprisingly, where you're like, this leaves in America.
It's a skilled way.
But
that's
there
we do it messy.
Yeah. And then they'd be like, this is what's going on, da 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 da. And then you would kind of plead your case, and they kind of go back and forth and work it out that way. And then I would never say anything to you, but because Jaleesa or V came, or Mary came back to me and said, okay, like da 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 da, this is their side of it. It's kind of handled that way.
Yeah.
Though you and I never talked directly, because someone's gone between us and fixed it, you're good. And then you
we come back together.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. That's really beautiful. And that's one of the things that I loved about the Peace Corps model, which is not perfect by any means. And I firmly believe, and I think nobody can tell me different, that we had really solid Peace Corps staff across the board. And again, everybody's not perfect, man. But we had some strong contenders as far as like, you know, staff and the support in that way. But even still, like the idea of you're going and immersing yourself in a culture so that you can, you know, show American culture through your experience and sharing that with others, but also immerse yourself well enough as to where you can come back home and have conversations like this 15 years later and talk about the ways in which culturally we have strengths that we can bring to the table that other cultures have that we overlook because they are third world or because they're developing and because we just don't know enough about them. How do we bring that back and then show America that there's more similarity than not amongst humans, but also that there are cultural things that other people doing that we could probably learn a little bit from, you know?